Hey, hey, hey. All right, this video is like, I don't know. I just looked at it and it has basically a bit of a chart system in it, so it kind of shows how nerdy it is I am. But anyways, the video is like this, truly understanding something. And then what I draw is I draw three lines basically that represent the x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis, the z-axis. So the y-axis has information, the x-axis has scope, and the z-axis has depth. And I wrote under it individuals. Um, Here it is. You see it? Y-axis, x-axis, z-axis. So truly understanding something has three basically parts for me. One is information. Getting information is basically, I guess, like one way or another is kind of like a key to understanding. It's like, what is it that you're actually looking at? I want to understand it. So like information. Makes sense, totally. But then there's the scope. And I think the scope here, I mean applicability, right? Like, why am I understanding it? Where can I actually take it? If I'm not mistaken, this is inspired by the book I read from Professor Richard Feynman. And the z-axis is basically the third dimension, which is the depth, and that's basically the individual's approach to whatever you're trying to understand. So, like, scope. Scope is basically, is it applicability? Because the scope of this is how far it extends into this world. The y-axis is information. Like how much information about it can you actually like find, create, understand, not understand. I can't use the word because I'm describing understanding. Find, create, reason with. Okay, I can use that word or that framed sentence. And depth. Well, depth is basically you ingraining yourself in that thing you're truly trying to understand, allowing you to formulate it in different ways where you can actually like, well, allowing you to use it, because truly understanding something means you use it as a form of expression. It's an extension of you. And one of my favorite things about like martial arts is almost all of them treat weapons as an extension of themselves. And the idea is if you're operating with the weapon the same way you operate with your hands, be it a sword, be it a stick or something like this, your true familiarity with it is really just like understanding what you can do with it and understanding where it can be used. Like you can't use like I don't know what it's called, but like the big stick that's taller than you can't use it in small spaces. And the same with kind of like I guess all kinds of weapons. There's limitations to them. So maybe that's the scope. Like scope is basically the limitation of it, or at the very least, like where it could end, or where information about it has stopped, where you could actually add some creativity from your own, or like extend it to a different side. So that's what the depth of the individual. I think that's truly like the key to understanding, because like you can always get information, you can always kind of figure out where it's used. But how you would use it is or whatever it is that you're using. Again, like maybe I'm referring to right now to programming, or maybe I'm referring to right now to the concept that I'm coding, or I'm referring to people and my understanding of people, because like if we're projecting ourselves in everyone that we meet, then practically like to truly understand ourselves, we have to realize what we see out of them and how we are kind of like using that in order to like assert certain things within ourselves. I have no idea, but truly understanding something could be anything, be just water, it could be music, it could be an instrument of some sort, a machine of some sort. And ultimately, the masters of these kinds of things are the ones that like make stuff out of it that others before them were not able to make. And I could actually use music because, like, I don't know how many of you are guitarists, but I don't know if you realize that these, like, before the 60s, electronic sounds didn't exist. And then, like, there was like a boom in like electronic music, which is still music. It's just like music that's kind of like altered a certain kind of way. And it's because people randomly just sought different ways to express themselves through the tools that are in front of them. And fuck, even the guitar, like, there are sounds that are recently being like made by the guitar that didn't exist like 10, 15 years ago. It's amazing because basically imagine the mastery that you reach, the people that reach somewhere, and then the new people that kind of like took it to a different level, increase the scope, basically. And so repeats. So the key three things are basically information, scope, and depth. Depth is the individualistic thing. Depth is your own basically utility, your own usage of how things work. Depth is basically how you interact with the information you have and the scope that's in front of you, and how you build your relationship with whatever it is you're trying to understand. It does sound like a fun way to explore something, right? Because ultimately, like you're looking at it as okay, what do I know about it? Where can I use it? And how would I use it? Oh, what, where, how? Why the fuck not? So, what am I looking at? What do I do? What is it used for? Uh, where do I use it? Where do I look for stuff about it? Right? Because like there are some things that you kind of like are your scope of reference is limited to what you know currently, but there are multiple different places to look where you can actually like extract different information. And so if you have that within your frame of mind, you're able to kind of like I think I do that when I'm searching for programs because like when I'm searching Google, I basically like to truly understand something, I go and I see where it's used. And then I try to apply it to what I'm doing, and that's where I kind of like, how am I using it? How am I going to use it? But that works with everything, right? That works with like whoever's studying music kind of has to like understand more about what they're learning. Whoever's trying to be an athlete has to like expose himself to other like forms of athleticism for him to kind of like pick his style. And then genuinely, it's just like basically when it comes to information, when it comes to scope, information are detailed about are catered towards what you're doing or what that thing does, whilst the scope is how people do it. And for you, the depth is how you would express yourself. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but there's something that I'm trying to click on. There's something that I'm trying to kind of like consciously establish. I don't know. It seemed like a good note to take. Even though now that I've explained it, or at the very least talked about it for 10 minutes, it feels that way with almost all my like videos. It feels like when I first start, they're exciting, but then they become generic. But I think they become generic simply because like that's what happens when something truly like connects with you. Oof, I have no idea. This is my version of understanding something and the three dimensions of like approach. And I feel like it's not one and then the other. I think it's a bit of each and then basically expand within the three dimensions that way. It's like you kind of like go a bit about information, and when you do that, you kind of like hit a plateau, and then you go a bit in scope or into depth. And then when you hit a plateau, you will choose a different direction. I think that allows you more versatility in terms of approach because it kind of like destructures how this is relevant to you or how you can create some form of relevance from it. Yeah, I much prefer because like I don't know if it's my ADHD, but for me, I always kind of like get bored when I'm like introducing myself to something new. I think most of it, the time, my limitations is the fact that like whatever I know has become redundant and repetitive. So what happens is I go search for something else pertaining what I'm approaching. And that is basically me diving deeper into scope. And then I try to do something with it, and that's me diving deeper into the individuality and depth behind it. And then I try to seek different information when I find myself limited again, or just kind of like circling around it. Super fun. Amen to the deal.